You'll just pull the microphone up close. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Knighton. Would you please state your full name for the court reporter and spell your first name, please?
Naya Knighton, first name is N-I-Y-A.
And Ms. Knighton, how are you employed in?
I work for Christus Dental Hospital in Beaumont.
And what do you do for Christus?
I'm a forensic nurse.
And in order to be a forensic nurse, does that require you to be a registered nurse?
It does.
And how long have you been a registered nurse?
For 17 years.
And your training and experience, or training and background, what does that include?
I have a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing and a Bachelor's of Science in Health. And then I also have a certification. I'm a certified adult in pediatric sexual assault nurse examiner.
Otherwise referred to as a SANE nurse.
Yes, sir.
And a SANE nurse, sexual assault nurse examiner, do they or does that require special additional training?
Yes, sir. It requires a certification.
Okay. And how long have you been a SANE nurse?
For 12 years.
Okay. And please explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what exactly a SANE nurse does.
So, well, now we're more forensic nurses where we complete sexual assault exams. Now we also see child abuse, domestic violence patients, and also gunshot victims and stuff.
What is it that a SANE nurse is looking for?
First, we're there to medically treat the patients, and then we also assist sometimes with law enforcement with evidence collection as well.
Okay. And after you perform, and this, your evaluation consists of an examination, the SANE exam, correct?
Yes, sir.
And have you performed a SANE exam on few or on many occasions?
On many occasions. Hundreds.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Now, in your training and experience, the term sexual assault that just doesn't include what people would think of traditionally like in the way of intercourse, right? A person can be sexually assaulted in different ways. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And it's one of those ways, or could one of those ways be inserting a finger into someone's sexual organ.
Yes, sir.
And let's talk about, in your training and experience, what the female sexual organ consists of. What does it consist of?
The female sexual organ consists of various parts. First is the labia majora, minora, the vulva, the vagina, and then there's some external like the mons, the clitoris.
And all of those in total, in your training and experience, consist of the quote-unquote female sexual organ.
Correct.
May I publish states 10, Judge?
Yes.
Ms. Knight, I am going to, for the record, I'm publishing what's been previously admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit number 10. You've got a screen there behind you if it's more helpful for you to look at or refer to that. But is it fair to say that this is a diagram of that female sexual organ that you've just been testifying to?
It's considered the anal genital area because it also has the anus at the bottom.
I mean, the witness utilized either the pointer, probably the pointer's probably better.
Either way, there's the green, if you want to stand up and use the pointer, just be sure you speak loudly and clearly, or you can sit there and use the there we go. And if you can, that way you can kind of pull that microphone and that you're still talking into it so they can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Okay, so please help us understand your previous testimony about the various parts of the female sexual organ, please.
So this top area here would be considered the female sexual organ, and this would be the anal area.
Labia majora, what would that be?
That's the outer lips.
Okay, and the labia minora.
Would be the inner lips.
Okay, and the clitoris there, right? And the vaginal canal, right?
The vaginal canal would be behind the hymen there in the opening.
And without you giving your own definition of penetration. If it was established or shown that the labia majora, or the outer, for lack of a better term, lips, were penetrated, would that consist of, in your training, medical training experience, a penetration of the female sexual organ?
Yes.
And did you perform a SANE exam on Taylor Dempsey back on April the 5th of 2022?
I did.
And did you document that SANE exam?
I did.
In what way did you document it?
We have a form that comes in a sexual assault kit, and while we're completing the exam, we fill out that form.
And did you bring the form that you used to document Taylor Dempsey's SANE exam back on April the 5th of 2022?
Yes, sir.
And does it help you to refresh your recollection if you are able to refer to that document?
Yes, sir.
Have you performed few or many SANE exams since April the 5th of 2022?
Several.
And you don't remember each and every detail about everything that was said or done during each SANE exam, correct?
Correct.
So it helps to refresh your memory.
Yes, sir.
So by all means, if you need to, please refer to your notes or records from the SANE exam. Is there a process or guidelines for conducting a SANE exam?
Yes, sir.
What are they?
First, there's law enforcement involvement. They give the case number. So once we ensure that that is the case number for that patient, they come into our ER. We will then take them from our triage area into our own personal room. In our room, we have them sign consent, giving us consent to perform that sexual assault exam. Once we have consent, we will, of course, like we do every patient in our ER, we do like a head-to-toe assessment. We ask them what happened, and we are filling out this form as we're doing so.
Okay. And do you document the patient's demeanor?
Yes, we do.
Did you document Taylor's demeanor?
Yes, I did.
And again, if you need to refer to your notes, how did you characterize her demeanor?
That she was calm and cooperative, that she sat upright with her hands intertwined, and she became tearful when she gave her history, but she kept eye contact.
So she became tearful. And for purposes of this medical exam, did she provide you with information?
Yes, she did.
And that information, what did it include?
What we call it a history of events, and that's where they detail what happened so that we know how to treat them.
And what did she say happened to her?
Basically, she said that she went in for a follow-up exam after having surgery, and
Did she say what kind of surgery?
yes,
What? I'm sorry, what kind of? I'm looking at page 2 of 8 at the very top,
Yes.
first line.
She had the tummy tuck and a thigh lift.
Okay. And then what did she say then?
That she went in to have her sutures removed from her stomach. She was in the exam room with her mom, and then she was brought into another room, and her mother was asked to stay behind. She stated that as she was making her way to the exam table, that he grazed her butt with his hand.
Who's he? What was your understanding of who he was?
When clarifying the perpetrator, she said Dr. Benmoor.
Okay, please continue.
She said that she was on the table and her pants were down like mid-thigh and she had underwear on. He removed the sutures and he kept asking if I liked coming to him, is what she stated. She thought he was going to check the thigh incisions, but instead he pulled down her underwear and he slid his fingers between the legs.
And then what did she say he did?
He touched my labia. It was a rub.
Okay.
She says he didn't penetrate or anything, but then he stopped there.
Let's talk about that, penetration and how she characterized this rub. in your training and in your experience, is there or has there been either some conflation or misunderstanding of what medical profession, of the term penetrate?
Yes, sir.
And what's in your training experience has been the misunderstanding?
A lot of people don't understand what exactly penetration is.
And let's talk about what, not your definition, but what you have been trained on as it relates to penetration. What was your training that you received over the years as to what penetration consists of?
In our training, we were taught penetration is any contact past the labia majoris, which is the outer lip.
However slight?
Yes.
And not everybody or all your patients grasp that concept, do they?
Nothing.
Is it fair to say that some of them think that penetration consists of insertion into the actual vaginal canal?
Yes, sir.
So it's not uncommon, is it fair to say that someone would say or be thinking of penetration of the vaginal canal when asked this question about penetration?
Sorry, Judge, I've let it go for a long time, but he is leading the witness over and over and over.
Sustain to leave, sustain.
After she was asked about penetration, what did she say next?
She said that he wanted to take pictures of my incision, and he brought me into a different room. We were in a different room, and he asked me about my breast. He asked if he had done those. I had a shirt pulled up to show my abdomen, but my chest was covered. Then he pulled my shirt up and took a picture of my chest. My bra was still on, and he took a few pictures of my stomach and said the camera battery died. Then he kneeled down in front of me and pulled my panties down again and slid his fingers on my labia again.
A second time.
A second time. That's right.
What did she do?
She said I tried to back away, but I was against the wall. He understood though, and he stopped and stood up. I pulled my pants up, and he stood between me and the door and made me hug him. Then he asked if I liked hugging him, and I was uncomfortable, so I said I was a hugger. Then he pulled me into a hug, and he grabbed my butt, and I pulled away, and I grabbed the doorknob, and I left and got in my mind. He at one point asked me if I drove, and I said yes. He said next time when I come back, I need to drive myself. He didn't have gloves on throughout any of this.
Now let's talk about the fact that there was no gloves in your training experience. What if anything sticks out as it relates to it?
The fact that he did not have on.
Why is that concerning?
Because you're messing with an incision, so there could be risk of infection for both parties. He could introduce something into her newly incisions, or he could get some sort of discharge on his own hand. So bacteria both ways.
Now, did you obtain, you talked about gathering evidence for law enforcement purposes or prosecution purposes. Was a forensic specimen obtained from Taylor that day?
Yes, it was.
For what purpose?
One, for law enforcement purposes.
Okay, to be tested, right?
Right,
To be sent to the lab to be tested.
correct.
All right. And do you have any reason to doubt that the specimen that you obtained from Taylor DMC that day was in fact tested by the Texas Department of Public Safety Crime Lab? Do you have any reason to doubt that?
Okay.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd offer what I've marked as State's Exhibit number 11 pursuant to a certificate of analysis that has been on file for the requisite time period, and I believe it's unobjected to by the defense counsel.
These highlights on
I don't know. I think it's I mean, put those on there. This is the only copy I have.
I just want to know. It's on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm gonna put those on there at some point.
Judge, I don't have any objection to this. My suspicion is that Ms. Knighton is not a DNA expert, though, so I'm going to have an objection to any DNA testimony by this witness.
I don't intend to ask her to interpret or elaborate on this at all.
States 11 is admitted.
Just what I will ask is that she be allowed to publish it by reading certain portions of it.
But
I'm not going to ask any follow-up questions.
Sure.
that's.
I mean, anybody can read it.
Once it's in evidence, I don't care about that. I'm just saying in terms of interpreting what the data means.
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. You have a copy of State's Exhibit number 11 there in front of you. The Texas Department of Public Safety Crime Lab report, correct? Crime Lab report, laboratory case number. Laboratory case number HOU 2204-05819. That's what you got?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to direct your attention to, I guess for reference purposes, we'll refer to these numbering system here as paragraphs. We've got 0101 AA, 0102 AA, 0104 AA, 05 AA, 07 AA as well. Let's start from the reverse and work our way back with 07 AA on page 2. What I'd like for you to read is the header for that paragraph. What does that header say?
Panties,
And underneath that,
swab of panties.
swab of the panties. And let's refer back to page 1, where it lists, at least according to the report, the victim. Who does the report list as the victim?
Taylor Dean Dempsey.
All right, so in paragraph 07 AA, swab of the panties, could you read just an excerpt verbatim, word for word, from from that paragraph?
Starting at the beginning.
Well, that highlighted portion.
Okay. Applying a statistical confidence interval of 95%, this profile is not expected to occur more frequently than 1 in 5,471 U.S. males. In addition, any paternally related male relatives of near-venure cannot be excluded as the contributor of this male DNA profile.
Any paternally related male relatives of near-venure cannot be excluded as the contributor of this male DNA profile, is what it says underneath the swab of the panties, right?
Correct.
All right, let's move on to paragraph on the preceding page, 05 AA. The header on that one.
Abdomen swabs.
All right, so we got the swab of the panties, now we're moving on to the swab of the abdomen. Same thing for that one? Same reference underneath that paragraph?
Yes, sir.
That the any paternally related male relatives of near-venure cannot be excluded as the contributor of this male DNA profile. Paragraph 04 AA, the Mons swab. What's the Mons area of the human anatomy? Do you need the diagram again? Do you want the full body or do you want the other diagram?
Either. It's on both.
All right, I'm publishing states 10 here. What's the Mons area?
So it's the fatty upper area here.
Okay. Is it the same statement underneath the Mons area that was underneath the abdomen, underneath the swab of the panties? Is it fair to say any paternally related male relatives of near-venure cannot be excluded as the contributor of this male DNA profile?
Correct.
Now let's move on to paragraph 02 AA. Now 02 AA says vulva swabs. What's the anatomy or where on the body is the vulva? What does that consist of?
It's more in the vaginal, past the lips. It's more in this area.
So with regard to the swab, swab the panties, and no male relatives of near veneer can't be excluded from the panties, no male relatives of near veneer can be excluded from the abdomen, nor can they be excluded from the mons area. But with regard to the vulva swabs, verbatim, what does it say there?
No YSTR profiles were obtained.
Now, I'm not asking you to interpret this in any way, these results, but what I am asking you in your medical training and background, what is YSTR?
That would be the male profile.
So, no YSTR profiles were obtained, or no male, how'd you characterize it?
Like the male DNA profile.
So no male DNA profiles were obtained on the vulval swabs. And lastly, on paragraph 801AA, verbatim, what's listed there?
No interpretable YSTR profiles were obtained.
This is related to the labia swabs. So referring to your diagram again, there was the vulva swab
Which is more inner.
and no YSTR profiles or male DNA profiles were obtained there. And then there's the labia swabs. What are we talking about again for labia?
So on this area.
And again, verbatim, no interpretable YSTR, Y star profiles were obtained.
Correct.
All right, so there's no Y star or male DNA in those particular areas. Again, I'm not asking you to interpret this report, but what I am asking you is in your training and medical experience, what would make that particular area different from the other areas? The labia area, the vulva area, what would make it different from those other areas that we've discussed?
All the other areas, well, the vulva areas had no YSTR profiles. The labia had no interpretable YSTR profiles. The abdomen had partial, the panties had partial, so those had partial, the labia had no interpretable, but the vulva had none.
I guess what I'm getting at is there a medical explanation in your training experience as to why there could be either none or no interpretable Y star there?
And
Hold
here's
on.
where I'm going to object, Judge. This is DNA evidence that is outside the scope of her expertise.
I'm asking her why, in her training experience, there might not be any genetic material there in that particular area. I think she can testify to, not interpreting this, but why there wouldn't be the existence of genetic material in that particular area versus another area.
She's not an expert in DNA, Judge. She's essentially asking her about transference in DNA that is very specific, and I can't imagine that she has the training skills and experience to interpret that.
Let me ask it another way, Judge, if I may.
Sure.
What makes that area different from the other areas that we discussed?
Well, the vaginal area has fluids and discharge.
That's exactly what I was getting at. That's all I wanted to, that's all I needed. I think I'll pass the witness to.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman.
Good afternoon, Ms. Knighton.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Good.
I'm good, thank you. So I want to just be clear with the jury here. You have a lot of skills, training, and experience as a nurse. Is that correct?
Yes,
And more specifically, as a sexual assault nurse examiner.
correct.
Agree with that? One of your jobs, we've just got done talking about DNA, so I'm going to flip where I was going with this and start talking about that first.
Okay.
One of the jobs that you have as a sexual assault nurse examiner is to do DNA collection. Is that correct? And so I noticed in the DNA report that you made collections from the labia, is that correct?
Correct,
The vulva,
correct,
the mons,
correct,
the abdomen,
correct,
and somehow made a swab of the panties, is that correct?
correct.
And the labia, you don't differentiate on here whether the swab came from the labia majora.
This is the turning point of the testimony, and it's packed with both emotional weight and legal significance. The nurse is now recounting the patient's own words, documenting not just physical actions, but the sequence of events and behavior that followed. From a legal standpoint, this history of events is crucial because it explains why certain medical exams were performed and what areas were examined. Notice something important here. The alleged contact is described as touching the labia, with the patient stating there was no penetration. That distinction matters a lot. In many legal contexts, how penetration is defined can directly impact the severity of charges. But as the nurse explained earlier, medical definitions and common understanding don't always match. Emotionally, this testimony also introduces discomfort, confusion, and hesitation from the patient.
Came from the labia majora or the labia minora, is that correct?
Correct.
So we just don't know, based on how you label these things, whether we're talking about the outside labia majora or whether we're talking about the inside labia minora, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, everybody's, or at least with women, everybody's anatomy is a little bit different than each other. Do you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Just like some people have differences in their ears. Some people have ears that hang down and some people have ears that are connected. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Some people have labia minora, which I don't want to say normal, that's not the right word, which people oftentimes think of being inside, that actually protrude to the outside. Do you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
And they can actually be more prominent than the labia majora. Is that
Yes.
correct? And this diagram that we've been using, and you referred to a minute ago and kind of named everything for us. Still has it upside down.
I'm sorry.
The way this looks here, this is not, if somebody just laid down with no clothes on, this isn't exactly what it would look like, correct?
Not exactly, no.
We would say, I'm not trying to be crass here, but this is essentially a splayed view of this. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean by that?
Sort of.
It's open so we can see everything. But that's not how it normally would be, correct? In a resting position.
It varies.
It varies. So it can be different from person to person. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Now, the incisions that we are talking about in this case, and we'll get to your diagram of the incisions, but the incisions we're talking about are going to be right here. Do you agree with that? Where those sutures would be?
Well, I have to refer to where I drew them on my diagram.
Okay, may I approach you with your diagram?
Sure.
This is State's Exhibit number 9, Judge.
Yes, sir.
And so they are in exceptionally close proximity, at least to the labia majora. Do you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
And if one was going to have to remove sutures from that area, you would be in close proximity, and if not direct proximity, to the labia majora certainly, and potentially the labia minora. Do you agree?
I think it would depend how far back they went.
Okay. Well, let's go with this too. You're also, I'm not being critical of you, but let's just be candid with each other. You're not a surgeon, correct? You've never performed a thigh lift?
No, I have
Never performed a tummy tuck?
not. No, I have not.
If I wanted to know the correct way to do all of this stuff, that's the kind of person I would want to ask, right?
Right.
Because those people are trained in their professions.
Right.
You agree with that? And in terms of the DNA, what you said, you agreed with me that you didn't differentiate between, at least in your label, between whether you took the swabs here on the labia majora or here on the labia minora, correct?
Correct. There were 4 swabs.
Sure.
So generally they're 2 and 2.
And again, I'm not criticizing you. I'm just trying to understand for the jury that there's no specificity in this DNA report because that was how you labeled them, right?
Right.
And if had you labeled them, In other words, I got 2 of these that are labia majora and 2 of these that are labia minora. It's conceptually possible that the results could have been different, correct?
Because they're so close together is why we don't label them, because they generally touch.
Okay. And would you agree with me that someone who is removing sutures from an abdominal or a tummy tuck area, you would expect potentially, again, if they're not wearing gloves, to find their DNA on that person, correct?
Well, yeah, on them in general.
Yeah, it's reasonable,
Yes.
correct? And it's also reasonable if they had to touch the person's mons, which is this top part. Oh, thank you. Let's do this, because we have Mr. Coleman and Ms. Dempsey earlier were talking about this area here being the majora and this here being the minora, and that's not correct. Do you agree with me?
Correct.
So let's do this. I'm showing you a minimalized version of that exhibit that we're looking at here. What I want you to do is you highlight the labia majora for me, please. Okay, and then can you highlight, switch out, the labia minora for me, please. Perfect. Now again, this diagram is in a splayed position, correct?
Correct.
And in everybody's, the size and structure of everybody's labia and labia majora and minora may vary from person to person.
Correct.
You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Now, what about this? Do you, let's put this on here so we can just make sure we're talking about the same things here. So that shows us what we're talking about, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now that, the part that's in orange there, again, can protrude out, correct?
It can.
And if somebody is in the way.
I don't necessarily have an objection, I just would ask that he continue.
Oh, okay, I just didn't want to draw on his exhibit, so.
No, tender
Tender.
diagram.
Okay, I'll call it Defendant's Exhibit 1, Judge, and I'll mark it right now.
Okay, and I don't know what else is on, I want to make sure that there's just that on the paper. It looks like there's something
Defendant's Exhibit 10.
on yours.
Oh. Yeah, we don't want that. Good call. Do you have scissors?
Miss Tanner has scissors.
Okay.
They don't trust me with scissors, apparently.
Nobody trusts me with scissors, so. So while we're doing this, I'm doing it forward too. When you take a patient history, you're writing down exactly what they tell you, is that correct?
Correct.
And you're not really doing question and answer, you're kind of doing it in a narrative format generally, is that right?
Correct.
In other words, whatever it is that they tell you is what you write down.
Correct, unless I have to verify.
Okay. And if you do that, you take that out of the quotation marks, correct?
Correct.
And if it's in quotation marks, we can assume that that is exactly what that person said.
Correct.
And in this case, you did that for Taylor Dempsey, is that correct?
I did.
Judge, I've now marked this as Defendant's Exhibit number 1, the highlighted version of this diagram.
No objection, Judge.
Defense one's admitted.
Thank you, Judge. And what she told you specifically was, I thought he was going to check my thigh incisions, and instead he pulled my underwear down and slid his fingers between my leg. Correct? Did I read that right?
Yes, he slid his fingers between my legs.
Okay. And then she says he touched my labia. Correct? She doesn't differentiate between labia majora and labia minora. Correct?
Correct.
It was a rub. He didn't penetrate me or anything. and then he stopped there.
Correct.
That's what she told you.
Correct.
And so we don't know if we're talking about when she's talking about this, this rub, this touch, whether it's the yellow part or the red part, do we? I mean, the orange part, do we?
No, we don't.
And again, I'm not fussing at you because you do this the same way every time, and I know your process. But I mean, you didn't follow up and say, well, when you talk about the labia, did you mean this or did you mean this, correct?
I did not.
You just wrote down what she said.
Correct.
And her inclination was to say he didn't penetrate me or anything, correct?
Correct.
Now, I want to show you another picture. This is State's Exhibit number 9. This is a diagram that you drew, is that correct?
Correct. Well, I didn't draw the diagram.
Well, you drew the sutures,
Yes, sir.
right? This is the diagram that allows you to draw the condition of a person or a child that comes in to see you, correct?
Correct.
And again, you and I have done this a number of times. Sometimes there'll be bruises or sometimes there'll be other injuries or something else on it, right?
Correct.
But here what you noticed or noted was the sutures.
Correct.
And so those sutures go all the way across between the abdomen and the mons
Correct.
on the top part, correct?
Correct.
And then the bottom, you call it stitches, and they go all the way up to the labia majora on your diagram. Do you agree with that?
On the diagram, yes.
Okay. And that's how it appeared. I mean, you drew it how it appears, correct?
But we can't, because it's not a lot of space, you can't really tell how close on one it is from there.
And you didn't measure it or anything, did you?
No, we did not.
And you also didn't draw it on here.
No.
So we don't know whether we're talking about stitches here or here or here, correct?
Correct. We take photographs, so.
We don't have those. Were those turned over to the state of Texas?
They usually aren't given unless they're requested specifically.
All right, so let's go on. May I approach the witness, Judge?
Sure.
This, I'm showing you State's Exhibit number 1. Have you ever seen these photographs before?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Do you recognize Taylor Dempsey in those photographs?
I can see her face a little.
If she identified herself as the person in these photographs, you don't have any reason to dispute that.
Right.
If she told the jury this was April the 5th, you don't have any reason to dispute that. I want you to look closely at the bottom right-hand corner of State's Exhibit number 1. She's got her panties on and some bandaging. You see that?
Yes.
Can you see any of the sutures with her panties on?
Not from these photos now.
If I wanted to take a photograph of the sutures, then you agree with me, I would probably have to either change her position or remove the panties, correct?
Yes.
And that's what she said happened, correct?
Correct.
She says he took a picture, let's see, he took a few pictures of my stomach, and then he said the camera battery died. And he kneeled down in front of me. I think we left out the part where he goes and gets a new battery and comes back in the room. She told that to other people, but then he kneeled down in front of me and pulled my panties down again and slid his fingers, she says, on, not in, not inside, not penetrate, right? She says on my labia again, correct?
Correct.
And she does not differentiate between her labia majora and her labia minora, correct?
Correct.
And you don't follow up with her to get that clarification, do you?
I don't know.
I'm sorry?
I did not.
Judge, I pass witness.
Thank you, Mr. Ertz. Mr. Coleman?
Just a a couple follow-up questions if I may, Judge.
Sure.
Ms. Knight, in your, was it 17 years of medical experience and training, what would be the medical necessity or medical reason during this particular procedure to ask if the victim liked hugging the doctor?
I don't think there is a reason that.
What would be the medical necessity or medical reason to grab the behind or buttocks of the victim by the doctor?
Zero reason why.
What would be the medical reason or necessity if you're there to have your sutures or stitches removed from your the tummy tuck or inner thigh area to either refer to, photograph, or comment on the victim's breast?
No reason.
What would be the medical necessity or the medical reason during this particular consult or visit to encourage the victim to drive herself alone to the next visit? In your training experience, is it medically advisable to not wear gloves?
As this testimony wraps up, what we've just witnessed is a detailed collision between medical evidence, patient statements, and legal interpretation. The forensic nurse provided critical insight, not just about anatomy, but about procedure, documentation, and what is considered medically appropriate behavior. One of the most powerful takeaways here is a repeated emphasis on what should happen during a legitimate medical exam: gloves, professionalism, clear medical purpose, and proper boundaries. The absence of those elements becomes just as important as the presence of any physical findings. At the same time, the defense focused heavily on precision, questioning wording, anatomical specificity, and the limits of what can be
Not wear gloves during this type of a procedure.
It's always advised to wear gloves.
In your training and experience, is it medically advisable to have a female staffer present during this type of a procedure?
It is.
The diagram, I think you may have mentioned it, but I just want to make sure that the jury understands this diagram. That diagram is not to scale, right?
Correct.
Judge, I may have one or two other questions, but may we approach first?
Sure.